Okay, so today I'm going to be reacting to Season 1, Episode 4 of Lain, and of course, Serial Experiments Lain, to say the full name. I don't know why they necessarily had to make it so verbose, but basically, so far it's been pretty good. I think we gave Episode 1 a B, Episode 2 a C, and Episode 3 a B. So Episode 1 was called Weird, and it was just sort of introducing the character and everything, and it didn't really delve too much into the computers. Basically just the email prank was kind of the main focus there, and the fact of the girl killing herself. So again, within 2 episodes, 2 characters killed themselves, and at least one of them perceptibly didn't have anything to do with Lain, or maybe in some weird way it did, but, you know, and maybe that's what the episode is calling, is calling Lain weird, but she's not really that strange, but she has that sort of unintentional ASMR voice, and just a very quiet disposition, and things like that, and so I've been fascinated by how that plays off of everything else. And I appreciate sort of the minimalistic dialogue that the series has at times with respect to, you know, it's just very to the point, but not necessarily in a bad way. George Lucas should have learned from this for the prequels, but no, it's a master of setting tone. But the one thing it lacks, and kind of the trade-off of that style, I compare it to some like old French films like Les Samurai and stuff like that. Les Samurai is a story of a killer, right, like a criminal who is just very quiet in their disposition, so you kind of have to just read into their intentions a little bit, right? They're just very understated. So the movie Les Samurai, I forget exactly what year it came out in, but that's kind of what it reminds me of here, even though it's nothing to do with the same subject matter as far as crime. It sort of tells the story through contrast, right? Through the environment, through the tone, through the other characters, but it's not like there's super eloquent, verbose dialogue that's going on for the most part, right? Or a lot of it, if there is, it's not going to be spoken by her. It's going to be spoken like in her head, maybe through the wire, things of that nature. So that ends up being very, very interesting to consider. And so I just appreciate some of those quiet scenes, like it was in this last episode, right, where she discovered this thing in her mail, and I don't know who even put it there, but the dad was being standoffish, and so that scene says a lot without saying anything at all, that, you know, basically, he knows what it is. She asked her dad, right? I don't know what this last episode was called. The first episode was called Weird. The second episode was called Girls, where she's hanging out with her friends, and they take her to the club because they thought they saw her at the club before, and so she's already been in The Wire. So the last episode provided something good, right, that could have been done earlier. I almost would have switched episode 3 and 2 somehow. Obviously, some of the carryover of the guy killing himself in episode 2 is here, but whatever. I would have put this moment from episode 3 in episode 2 before all this happened, which was how I was questioning, like, how did she already get in The Wire? How is she already part of all this? Why is she seeing all these things? Like, why are all these things happening? And we haven't seen a good trigger point really for why, right? Those creepy guys showed up outside her house, right, with the gear on their head and stuff, and he's trying to do like a Jedi mind trick, like we're not even really here. And that's the guy who voices Dietard, I think, from Code Geass. But obviously this was much before that. Or maybe the dub itself wasn't. They could have always dubbed it later on if they released it in the English market. But the show itself is from 1990 something. And so the point is that, you know, it's maybe not one of the most financially viable series that they would even take the time to do, but it's also only 13 episodes. But that also maybe makes it not seem worth it either. Like, it's not going to have any staying power, so why even bother? But look, it's so edgy, and people are killing themselves left and right, and Lain is just has such a melancholy disposition that it's kind of hard not to, I don't know, like, the whole visual design around her and her whole style of, it's hard to explain even, but that sort of quiet, understated quality is definitely very effective. Right, she's more defined by what she doesn't say than what she does, or how she says it in the unintentional ASMR whispery tone and things like that. Right, it's like somebody who's always beside themselves, so it's hard to tell when something is really wrong. Right, like, let's say she was to kill herself in the end of the show, similar to how these other, you know, characters, her friend did and stuff like that, you almost wouldn't be able to see it coming. But she has left a couple clues of what might, you know, the characters might look back and say, oh, I wish we would have done something. That's almost my prediction of how it'll end, right? She'll get so warped up and wrapped up in what she's doing with the computer and in The Wire and stuff that she'll end up dissociating from the real world and then killing herself because she'll feel like, oh, I don't need this I don't need this physical body anymore. The way that one of the characters said, like when she was at her desk in this last episode, because she keeps hearing things and seeing things, and so it's going to confuse the audience as to whether it's really there. At least the girl, her sister, saw the other guys outside the house who presumably were in that car, right? Like, they're in that black car that was sitting there a lot of the time. And then she saw like another creepy guy on the street. So as far as we can tell, it's just a bunch of random images so far. We don't really know any context to it. But like she has some special power over the wire, or something she did in the wire is coming back to haunt her. So her personality in the wire is supposedly much more aggressive and assertive, right, and things like that. One thing I also observe about like the other characters in the show is they tend to be pretty honest and well-meaning, at least from the perspective of, like the delivery guy seemed like, oh, this computer's even better than mine, so I thought, well, maybe he'll steal it, or maybe and she's even acting all ignorant and naive and doesn't realize what other people could prey on, take advantage of that. So like when she's getting the prank email and they're having a conversation and she responds, she's asking other people, right, is your email still working, as if to imply that, oh, the only reason why I wouldn't have gotten a response isn't because I could be getting pranked or getting ghosted or whatever. It could just be, oh, something must be wrong with the email overall. So that shows both her ignorance of computers, but also her ignorance of sort of human nature or anything like that, that it couldn't just be that they're not responding. It couldn't just be that they're playing with you or toying with you, or they just don't care, or like I said, they're ghosting you or cyberbullying you, the original ghosting and cyberbullying before those things were even terms. No, it must just be that all the attention is good, just the same as yours is, right? You can't imagine someone acting in a negative, malicious way because you don't think like that if you're Lain, but you at least are, and they're a lot older than what, I still keep forgetting what age or what grade they're in, but they're in like high school, I think. But no, I saw the sister at the end, and I thought that was some other kid's mom or something, because we've only seen the sister once. So I said, like, now that's a grown woman, unlike Lain. So I guess I believe that Lain's sister is a grown woman, even though I don't know still. Like, she's more like college age, and Lain is more like high school age. At first, I was almost thinking middle school at the beginning of the series, just because she just looks so much younger than even her other classmates and stuff. But no, it's a case where you're basically in a position to consider that... Why is my thing wobbling around so much today, my stupid recorder? The point is that Lain is in a position where she's, very understated, so she looks even younger, too, than what she is. So we saw those guys come out. The police were even saying you should probably tell me more, but she didn't really do anything besides walk up to the guy and just talk to him and said, like, we're all connected. So that's like sort of the wire version of herself speaking, the one that they alluded to at the club the night before, the other friends, that, oh, she was much more aggressive than you, even though she was still understated in how she said it. So I guess nobody else really heard what she said. They were just taken aback by the fact that, that she was even just walking up to the guy in the first place and stuff like that, and that guy had some visceral reaction to her presence. So that could just be part of him being on drugs, on that drug Excel that we were introduced to in episode 2. That was kind of the problem with episode 2, is it's introducing this whole thing about the club, but it feels kind of forced. Like, the girls just happen to go to the club, they happen to see her there, they happen to see, that other guy happens to take a drug, right, and happens to shoot himself, but we don't even know who that guy is, right? It's just some random guy there who happened to take a drug that we saw at the beginning of the episode. Like, maybe we'll get more elaboration on it later, but that doesn't mean that, it just felt like one of those plot lines. Like, now the next episode, we'll go to the grocery store and we'll see somebody crazy there, and they'll end up killing themselves too. Like, it's just kind of random. So they just happen to go to a club, and one of the friends, like Alice, is really nice to her. She was apologizing. So that's at least a good disposition that she has there. And then most of the other friends are indifferent. And it's sort of another trope of, modern technology, and this is what computers are doing to kids, even though it's not necessarily that, is the fact that they're so desensitized. Like, they were even saying, oh, it felt like a dream. It felt like, why didn't we care about that or something? And so the point being that, Alice was sort of questioning, why don't we care more that we just saw somebody kill themselves in front of us? And the problem with that is it makes you question that maybe it didn't really even happen. They were saying, oh, it felt like a dream. So maybe that was just part of the wire. So the guy didn't really kill himself. Because, like, where's the police presence? That's the thing. The first girl, that'll turn out that everything that's happening is happening in the wire and not in the real world, right? So when the friend killed herself at the beginning, how come the parents didn't address that? Like, oh, we need to talk to you. Your friend just killed herself. Like, it's on the news. We should know about this. You know, everybody's getting pranked. And so the other moment, too, in episode 3, or in episode 2, I'm sorry, the end of episode 2, was kind of the same question. Like, how come the mother isn't curious about that? Like, she's not asking, where were you? Or she was, but it wouldn't be on the news or in the paper. Like, Lain, this random school kid, was seconds away from getting killed herself. She was just interrogated by the police, but her parents are neither called, nor do they know about it, nor, you know what I mean? Like, it's a case where you don't need to consider it other than that, because it's like, my thing is seriously falling all over so much. You don't need to consider it from the perspective that the mom seems very callous in her disposition. So that's one of the few character points that we've allotted here in the show, which has been kind of hard to allocate character points based on their intent or, you know, oh, how impressive they are or aren't. I don't know what the fuck's going on with this thing. Okay, it's hard to allocate character points when you don't even know what's going on in the first place, or what characters are about, or what they're intending to do, right, and stuff like that. And so the point being that we gave a -1 to the mother at the dinner table in, like, episode 2, or was that even episode 1? That might have been episode 1, like, where she's saying, I got a prank email, or I got an email from my friend who killed herself, and she doesn't, again, it's not even that she ignores that, like, oh, she got an email from someone dead, she's just imagining it, you know, like an imaginary friend type of thing, but it's more so that she's so callous that she doesn't even address the underlying point that, like, let's talk about the fact that one of your classmates killed themselves, right? Neither the father nor the mother took interest in that. That's kind of a traumatic event that you should probably discuss. And then the other one is the same thing. Like, you should probably be aware that, like, there's no, like, local news station or anything that happens in this little town that they're in. Like, basically, you would be able to consider that they would know about that she was just in police custody and just being interrogated, and she was just steps away from somebody else killing themselves. That's traumatic as well. She almost could have just gotten killed herself too, right? The guy did point the gun actually at her, and that red little, like, laser pointer was on her face. So a lot of this imagery will be taking place too, to show, like, oh, the technological side and obsession, like how she's walking through the wires above her head every day from school and stuff like that, right? So basically, all of that will have a pertinence to it, and all like sort of this symbolism and imagery. I'm not used to, like, talking this fast sometimes, so it can kind of take a toll on me, although I've been pretty good at it for the most part. But during the course of the reaction, I don't have to talk all the time. Like, I can pause and let the show speak for itself, but then often I am talking more in a show like this, which is almost more suited to reactions, because, you know, it's just a case where, whatever, it's kind of like, there's kind of quiet moments, and they kind of let the scenery and stuff like that brood and whatever. So it's meant to be kind of like an edgy show in that way, and I do appreciate the art style. It reminds me of some old school sort of movies that I've seen. Of course, being a film critic and having seen so many movies, and more so than other shows and even other animes, I haven't seen that many all the way, but it has, like, that understated quality that you typically wouldn't see in this type of series, where, you know, it's letting the material speak for itself and kind of simmer and things like that. They can be effective, but I also am afraid that it might fall to the specter of feeling like a little bit random with respect to, there'll be a lot of questions that just go unanswered that we have even now, but even by the end of the show, and they'll be just left hanging where people are still debating them to this day. And, like, if you criticize something, they'll say, oh, you just don't get it, or they'll say, basically it's the position to oh, you don't get it, or, oh, there's some elaborate theory like a Stanley Kubrick artsy sort of film thing, where it sort of uses ambiguity almost as an excuse. I'm just assuming this is how it might be towards later on. Like, a bunch of random stuff will happen, and it's kind of leaving it to interpretation, but then, oh, if you don't like it, it's your interpretation that's wrong, or if you don't get it, or if there's no... Again, sometimes stories like that are just... It's not even that you don't get it, it's that there's nothing to get, or... just because it's obscure and cryptic doesn't mean it has some profound meaning. Like, okay, maybe we don't get it, or maybe, whatever there is to get isn't that profound. That doesn't make it meaningful just because there's something obscure and unknown and weird and, just a lot of random images and stuff like that. So it might be the kind of series you almost have to watch through a second time. And the one disadvantage is I sometimes miss out on the visuals because I'm more so watching it, out of the corner of my eye sometimes, where, you're not fully focused in or anything like that. And so, yeah, this last episode was solid. I liked the little scene at the police station, just how, again, it's dealing with a more serious payoff to what so far we haven't seen that. Like, the parents seem kind of indifferent and stuff like that. The mom is kind of indifferent overall, just to everything, right? She doesn't take interest in anything that the kids seem to be doing, that she just doesn't seem to care. She also doesn't seem to like the computers and stuff like that, but she maybe views it as sort of innocent, or, the father and the mother were having a conversation about it, like, she seemed concerned when she was taking some interest in the computer. And this last episode ended on almost a funny note, where you see Lain in a nice imagery where she's, like, taking off most of her clothes, and, like, the sister comes in baffled, like, why are you dressed like that? And so she's taking this obsessive interest in the computer, so, like, she doesn't get static. The only way to really prevent it is to take off your clothes. And so the dad is almost going to be proud of her, although she was standoffish with respect to, with telling her that, what that thing was that she got. But no, my whole thing is, like, it would have been a better way to qualify it. She should have gotten that thing an episode earlier, in episode 2, and hooked it up, and then that would explain, oh, now she's seeing all these crazy things because of that. How come she's been seeing all these crazy things, or whatever she's doing in The Wire? How was she able to do that without even any knowledge of computers, right? The computer that she was using was just her old computer that she already had, and the computer that she got was in the mail from her dad, right? He ordered it for her, and even though it's, like, brand new or something, so none of that explains really how or why she's been seeing all of these kind of things, right? It was just sort of happening on its own, or it's something innate to her as a person, like she's going to basically have she's like the chosen one, and she has some special sensitivity or affinity to The Wire, basically. Whatever this is, however she's connecting to it. All she did was go on, read, like, one email, and she's already kind of hooked, or, like, associated with all this, right? So there's something missing where this little device that she got could have explained some of that, but we don't really know exactly how, because... Or that doesn't even work, right? I would have done that first, so at least that would answer a lot of the questions. So something happened with her that happened a lot earlier and sooner, and without any sort of clear trigger point that we're aware of as the audience. Like, she's just seeing people, she's seeing things, stuff is already happening, she's already been in The Wire, she's already been to the club in The Wire somehow, right, with some sort of alternate reality, so it just leaves too many questions hanging that at least this device could have served to answer. Like, okay, everything's explained by that device. That allows you to access The Wire, even though you already have, right? So I'm missing how she was able to do it the first time, and maybe you're not meant to know, right? But sometimes I'll point things out like that, and people say, oh, you just don't get it, or, oh, it's something that'll be revealed later. Like, yeah, I get that, right? But I'm just sort of questioning it as we're seeing it. That's the whole point. It's not a hindsight sort of reaction. It's as you go. Like, I might come up with a theory that might be wrong too, but you're going just based on what is actually present there at the time. So we don't understand how she's been able to access that or get into all that at the beginning, right? From episode 1, already weird stuff has been happening. She's been seeing stuff. Nobody else is really reacting to it. So it's at least good that the sister sees somebody outside, because that proves that they're at least real. Even though they say, oh, we're not really here, like we're here over the wire, but yet she's still able to see them. And she's saying, like, we should call the cops or something like that. So I'm assuming those are the same guys who were in the car, that she keeps seeing that car sitting outside her house or whatever kind of whatever. It was just sort of there 2 or 3 times. And then the only other thing worth mentioning is the fact that, again, the dad sort of knows what that thing is, but he neither takes it from her nor does he tell her. So that's kind of the old psychological reverse bait, is that by not telling her or by not lying to her, you end up making her wonder all the more. Like, if he had just told her, oh, that's some useless thing, I'll just take it from you, she would have went along with it because she doesn't know any better. But everybody is almost too honest. Like, the kids at the club know how valuable and rare it is, and she has no clue. And so she could be taken advantage of, like, oh, just sell it to us for $10, or oh, it's useless, just throw it over here, or something like that, right? But they're completely honest with her and don't try to take advantage, even though they seem like they would want it for themselves. So that got those kids, the delivery kids, also, that guy was also being like a little flirtatious with Lain because, oh, he liked her wild side that was revealed, like, in The Wire. Like, I want to go out with you, but I want to go out with your side from. So I guess you could say that is partly him taking advantage. And we had a chippy girl who was his friend, right? One of these friends at the club that looked even younger than Lain. So I don't even know what to make of that. But the ages of some of these characters, there is some fascination with that in Japanese fiction, like, overall. That's why so many settings are, like, based around school and stuff like that. Right, like school kids and Code Geass, this guy's Zero, and he's a military fucking rebel and all this kind of stuff, but he's also a fucking high school kid. Or like in Death Note, at least that's how it starts, where he's in high school, right? So there's some obsession with this younger stuff, but also the age period, like trying to make even this age look younger than even what it is. And of course, this series is shorter than what I may be used to for this one, so the intros and outros can be a bit longer. But that's fine with me. Like, I was thinking maybe I'd watch 2 episodes for the price of 1, but then that ends up being, like, in one of these sessions, but that ends up being maybe a bit too much. So we can just kind of recap, and even if it's a little bit long, whatever, people can always skip it, like when I upload it and stuff. So I always view that as just a net positive. But no, that's the one thing that stands out. Okay, the dad knows what it is, but doesn't want to tell her. But the way to do it better would be to lie to her or to take it from her, or it'll be so bad that he'll like take it in the middle of the night. He'll sneak in her room and just kind of, like, they're giving Lain a certain amount of, like, she's just a good, quiet kid, so they're kind of letting her do what she wants to do, and he almost views it as a positive, not just because he's crazy about computers himself, but also because, she seems like so, like he wants her to take an interest, so that's kind of a good thing. But no, he seemed almost freaked out by it, so it's like, if he knew what it was, or it's like multi-layered, right? If he genuinely didn't know what it was, he would try to help her and try to find out, because he's such a computer junkie. It's like, wow, that's so interesting. I've never seen that before. Let me try to figure out what it is, and I'll help you. And he wants to have her take interest in this kind of thing. So by him saying he doesn't know, it actually means that he does know. He just doesn't want her to know, right? Kind of like that. So I'm trying to hide it from you because I think it's dangerous and you might get carried away, and it's for your own good. So it was more sullen and serious than if I simply didn't know. Okay, it's no big deal. Or again, I would even help you try to find out. He doesn't seem the indifferent type like the mom, especially to this technological type of thing where, I just don't care. So he's not like that. So she asked like a few times, like, Daddy, I thought you would know, or something like that. Then this kind of reminds me of a moment from The Sopranos, since we were just watching that in the slot before, like, where, the daughter of Tony, right, Meadow, is wanting some drugs to take an exam or something, right? And it's like speed or whatever, the way that people use it to try to help them focus on their studies or something, right? So the point is that they ask somebody else, right? They ask Chris. But let's say they even ask the dad, which of course they're afraid to do that. But they ask Chris, who's like a friend and a family, associate of Tony's. And so the point is that he says no, and then he assumes, they're going to go out and seek it somewhere else. They're going to try to buy the drugs on the street, and then that'll get them in more trouble. They might get raped, they might get killed. So I may as well sell it to you in the first place. So it's the same thing here. It's like, by not giving Lain this information, and by leaving it so mysterious and saying no, and not even trying to help her, and not even lying to her, like, giving her some lie that, oh, it's something else and it's not a big deal, so don't worry about it. You instead make her wonder, and by making her wonder, now she's going to seek out that information somewhere else from a club that could potentially take advantage of her, which thankfully they didn't. But see, like, she went to a club with all these degenerate kids and stuff, asking for a date and stuff like that. And she gave, like, a dirty look when they said, I want the wild Lain. Like, whether that's because you're even asking for a date in the first place, or whether it's because you're just offended, like, what, I'm not good enough for you kind of thing, I couldn't tell. We just see it from the back of her head, but that was, she was maybe a little assertive there. Or maybe the whole joke there could have been like, oh yeah, more like that, right? She's getting upset that you're saying that, oh, I want the wild Lain from In the Wire, and I want to go out with you on a date. She's upset about that, and so he's like, oh yeah, more like that. Like, you should be like the way, she's not doing it to try to play into that, being more assertive, but being offended by the fact that you're even bringing that stuff up, right? It's like, oh yeah, I like it when you get aggressive with me like that, about the fact that you're offended about it, right? Like, it's sort of the inverse of what you're intending, but you're playing into it nonetheless, unintentionally, and then, she'll resemble her assertive self just because she's offended and pissed off by how he's treating her. But no, in the end, they end up being relatively nice, and in the prospect of doing that, it would basically be a case where, you're able to have the kids be sort of still relatively nice. They're not truly trying to take advantage, and he's even doing it kind of jokingly, and she doesn't even really know what the wire is or exactly what they're talking about. And so, yeah, the dad leaves it mysterious and lets her seek out the same information. Again, if you're a drug dealer, but you don't want to sell your drugs to your friend or to your friend's daughter or something like that, right? Then the point is that that by saying no, they're going to seek it out somewhere else and somewhere more dangerous. So why not just do it yourself? Because at least they're going to be better off getting it from you than from some other shady supplier, where it's like, that could be tainted stuff, or they could be taken advantage of in the process of the deal. They could be ripped off. They could be, killed or something, right? You don't know who they're going to get it from, or you might suspect who they're going to get it from, and that might be worse. So it's the same thing here. You would have been better off just telling her or just lying to her instead of leaving her to wonder, and now she'll go seek it out from a club, and now she'll do it on her own anyway, and you didn't go in her room in the middle of the night and steal it from her and stuff like that, or really figure out how she got it or where she got it from. Right, she just got it in her mail from the school. So I don't know who even gave that to her. Maybe those creepy guys with the goggles, or maybe her friend who's dead, who somehow has some collective, I guess anybody who's associated with the wire could potentially, have that sort of sway to be able to do this in the real world. Or are we even in the real world? We'll be constantly asking that. But no, it's just a case where, again, the delivery guy, in all these situations, she's very, like, ignorant and naive of something, but she doesn't even realize that she could be taken advantage of. So, like, with the kid, right, the delivery guy is like, oh, this is better than mine, and she doesn't even know about it or anything about it, but he's just encouraging. He doesn't try to take advantage in one of two ways, like, oh, I'll just take it for myself then and swap it with something else, and you won't know any different, because, like, obviously the dad's gonna know, and he could get in trouble and lose his job, so I'm sure he wouldn't want to do that. But just because she's so clueless, and she's the only one there receiving the shipment, he might have some funny idea to try to take it for himself and swap it with something else, or, oh, it's not even that special, so you don't even need it, why don't you keep this other old one that I happen to have with me? Right, trying to bamboozle her that way, or try to say, oh, I'll come by and help you one day, and learn how to use it, because, in some sort of creepy, flirting way, almost like, I'll come by and try to help you use it because, it's a case where I'll come by and help you try to use it because you don't know how and you don't know anything about it, and use that as a chance to sort of, use it as like a date opportunity almost. So I'm surprised that neither of those things really manifested. And then the other point of it is just the fact that those kids at the club, again, could have taken advantage more, like, you should sell it, and you should sell it for like $10 because it's useless, or that's just a piece of junk, you should just throw it away so I can take advantage of that, or, something more like that could have happened. So everybody is kind of still too nice with the fact that not only is she ignorant of these things like to do with computers, but she's also too unsuspecting, that she doesn't think anybody else would take advantage of her ignorance in that way. And so now it ends off on the sister. You know what, maybe I could do too, because I could, I don't know, no, I'll wait. But no, it's like the sister ends off on kind of a funny note, looking at her kind of obsessively, pulling her sleeves down literally and figuratively, almost nearly naked, just to try to take advantage of, trying to avoid static and stuff like that. Whether that's a prank on her, like they told her that's the only way to truly avoid the static, just to kind of, she'll believe anything they tell them, but, just that she's taking such an obsessive interest in it, because of the fact that she's taking an obsessive interest in it because of the fact that she wants to meet her friend over the wire. So that'll serve as actually a good reasoning, like a MacGuffin device, in the sense that, that would make it seem better. It's not like she actually cares about computers, even at the beginning of the show. That's what makes it so interesting, the fact that, she wasn't already a computer nerd, and now she's just getting obsessed and pushing it over the edge. She's actually, she actually seemed to have no interest in it, and her dad was maybe even disappointed and encouraging her she should take interest, but, she somehow didn't care. So it goes from 0 to 100 too quickly, right? Like, she goes from having no interest to now having full interest, even if it's because of the MacGuffin device, to getting now obsessed, basically. It might have been more conventional or convincing if she was already into them a little bit or a lot, and now this just pushes her over the edge. She discovers the wire and gets obsessed with it that way. But the point is that the good rationalization for why she would take this level of interest is the fact that her friend in the email and in this other world, she wants to kind of find a way to meet her. So at least that's a good reason for her to have this unflinching, unconditional interest into obsessing over this. Because otherwise she might not even care still, right? All this stuff would have fallen on deaf ears with her before. Either because she doesn't know any better, right? She doesn't even know what's being talked about, so it's kind of overwhelming to her, and she still doesn't know. And she also doesn't really care, right? Even though her dad's doing this stuff right in front of her. And that's obviously convenient. Those were like the two funny moments, almost. Like in episode 1, where she goes into her father's area, where he's working on the computers. Like, how convenient is that? This story is going to be about computers and technology. And so how convenient is it that her father happens to be working on this big supercomputer system, right, as soon as she walks in, right? So that's a very convenient character association, that her dad happens to be dealing directly with that. And then the other funny, so you just walk in and see that, like, oh, this show is going to be about computers. How do we know? And then we see her dad, with like a station of 10 computers working on all this crazy stuff. And then the other funny moment was here at the end of episode 3, where it's like, her sister walks in and sees Lain stripped down, working on this computer system so obsessively, right? That definitely has a certain relevance to it, because it's like, it's going to have a darker interpretation as we go on further, but it's still kind of a cool image to show, like, oh, look how she's taking interest, and she's so passionate about it that she's willing to, again, pull down her sleeves, both metaphorically and literally. Metaphorically, that she's willing to put in the work herself and try to figure this out, but also because she's even willing to strip down for it and try to avoid the static and stuff like that, right? So even though she doesn't really know that much about it, she's taking the interest, and she's actually smart to be able to figure it out, I guess, just by the kids telling her. It's like somebody telling you directions. Go here, go there, when you've never been to a place before. Like, yeah, I totally understood what you're saying. Go down Exeter Street and this and that. Like, I don't know what that street is. I just got here. I'm new to the area. It's the same thing here. The kid tells her the instructions, but you wouldn't even know what he's talking about, but somehow she's going to figure it out. So that's how the episode ended off, and so it was a good episode. We get a couple sights of the creepy guys, outside her house and stuff like that. yeah, Lain is almost like reverse jailbait in the sense that she looks a lot younger than what she is, but she is older, right? Like, her friends look older than her. That's part of the whole understated thing that they're trying to do, like with how she's so quiet and everything, but I don't know, it's almost too much, like where she looks just way too young. But that is like a Japanese trope, like, Japanese culture apparently glorifies youth a lot, and they stigmatize getting old, so that's why not only are these high school settings so sought after, I'm kind of rewatching episode 3's opening just to see what the title was, right? It usually says it at the beginning, but it doesn't say it like when you actually go to click on it. But no, like the whole glorification of youth, like, so you always get these scenes of like somebody talking over the wire on the street at the beginning. Almost for in episode 2, I thought that it was repeating episode 1. Or is this episode 4? Oh no, this is just episode 1. What? So they're called layers rather than episodes, but let me see. That's so weird. It's saying it's episode 3, but it was playing episode 1 somehow. It bugged out. But no, I'll watch this for a second here before we start. Just to see what the name of the episode is, and then basically, the main thing here is she got that device, she's taking interest, she goes back to the club, you know. She always just looks so lost, and she's wandering around, and you see kind of the weirdness in her eyes, like something, they show you to focus on her eyes after a while, to show that she's part of the wire or something. She actually showed more expression in the opening than she does in the show, like, she's like warding off these birds and stuff. So that club is going to be a recurring place that, you know, but everybody seems to know about the wire like it's such a casual thing, and that's the first time we've seen it treated that way. Or it's been spoken about and treated mysteriously, but now those guys, those kids at the club are saying the same thing, like, oh, you know, like, oh yeah, you were on the wire, and it's no big deal, and everybody knows about that. So she's becoming a bit of a celebrity on the wire, I guess. So she goes like off into a trance, and then ends up in the wire, and doesn't even know it. And we haven't really seen that, or maybe we just don't know. But we haven't seen her personality like that, the way they're describing. Except for maybe that one moment at the club where she killed the guy. And you could say, oh, that's in The Wire too, but it doesn't make sense, because if that was in The Wire, then how come her friends and stuff were there? Or maybe they're in The Wire too. I don't know how to explain that. But just nobody's aware of it, or they just treat it like it's no big deal? Well, this should be episode 3, with the little police thing. I just don't remember seeing the title on it, so maybe after the police interrogation, it'll show up. They said, like, she's on the wire rather than on the wire. And you see her eyes again. Oh yeah, I made that joke. It's called Psych with an E at the end, but that's my favorite buddy cop show ever with Gus and Sean Spencer. Everybody's just so desensitized. They don't care about the fact that they just saw somebody die. They segue from talking about, like, 11 minutes in here, I just skipped ahead randomly, but it's the scene, like, where they're in the locker room. It's like, they go from saying, shouldn't we be more bothered by the fact that we just saw somebody kill themselves, to, oh, Lain, you got a love letter, because she got, like, a letter in her locker. Like, would you really transition that way, thereby showing how desensitized you are? Like, some elements of this could even be satirical, but I don't know if they're really meant to be. For the most part, it's playing it straight. Like, the tone is pretty serious, so it's not really trying to be funny. But, no, my favorite thing about it is that quiet, sort of understated way that the dialogue is so simple and straightforward, which almost makes it seem bad in a way. like it's just sort of banal and expository, but it works because, in contrast to the rest of the tone and the environment and everything like that, so you end up in a position where, I don't know, it's like, it says a lot just with the art style and the sometimes the way things are said, or, you know, double meanings and things like that, where, you know, like even what the dad was saying, if you read some of this dialogue on the page, like, in the form of a script, it would seem so ordinary. Like, do you know what this is, Dad? And then he just says, no. And then she says, oh, I thought you would know. And then he says, no, and then closes the door. That doesn't seem very powerful, but that scene was very good because there is a lot of double meaning that he probably does know. He's trying to hide it from her. He's sensing some of her obsession maybe already starting to fester, all these kind of things. So, you know what this almost reminds me of? There's some quote to do with Alec Guinness. Let me actually look it up here. I'll kind of read it to you verbatim before we start here. Somebody's obsession with Star Wars, right? And he even mentions, like, their eyes becoming all obsessive. So this is literally Lain, the original Lain moment. Like, Alec Guinness sort of hates Star Wars or something like that. Alec Guinness on Star Wars fans. Here is the clip. Watch. Or I'll just read it to you, I mean. Refurbished Star Wars is on the way. I have no intention of revisiting any galaxy. I shrivel inside each time it's mentioned. 20 years ago when the film was first shown, then I began to be uneasy at the influence it might be having. A sweet-faced boy of 12 told me privately he had seen Star Wars over 100 times. His elegant mother nodded with approval. I detected star shells of madness in his eyes beginning to form. One day they would explode. I would love you to do something for me, he says. You won't like what I'm going to do. Anything, sir. Promise never to see Star Wars again. He cries. His mother gets mad. Maybe she was right. And then it shows like some cosplayers or something. And it's kind of insulting to Alec Guinness to even say that. Oh, now you'll be famous again. Like, this dude was on Bridge on the River Kwai. He was in plenty of good movies. Like, he doesn't need to fucking mooch off Star Wars. But that's the sad thing, is like all these sometimes really good actors, that's what they end up being remembered for. Like, what's that guy's name who plays Snape? Rickman something, Alan Rickman, right? He ends up being known for Harry Potter more than anything, even though he was a good actor. He was in plenty of things, even like Die Hard, he played a good villain, but, you know, you end up being known just by the lowest common denominator, which is often what these actors probably don't want to be remembered by. No, but when I finished this series, which again, it's not really even that long, so I guess that's part of the reason not to watch 2 for 1, but no, I mean, I don't mind doing 2 for 1 with certain series, but this one almost deserves to be taken seriously. Not that I wouldn't do that anyway, but whatever, we can kind of just let it simmer a bit, but it also feels like I'm making these intros too long, but whatever, it's not positive. But that's kind of how I started this whole format too, is I think of it sort of as a net positive, like, it's just me sort of driving, right, every day, either to and from work or whatever. So it's like, the alternative to it is I just wouldn't do it at all, right? So the biggest thing I got to improve about the format is the mic itself. Got to cancel out some of this background noise like in the car. But generally speaking, it's just a net positive because you're able to basically appreciate that. I haven't seen too many shows, and so when this is over, I'll almost want to look up something similar to Lain, not in the sense that people would probably think, like, oh, something about technology and things like that. That's not what I really mean. Not that I mind that element, but I mean, like, the tone. There's something about the tone that is actually... See, like, people think of anime and they think, all these stereotypes, like, oh, cutesy, kawaii stuff and whatever. This series takes itself very seriously from the tone, from the beginning, all the way through, and it's consistent. It's not trying to really break it up with funny moments. Like, even at the end of the last episode, that felt like kind of like a funny moment or a funny image of just seeing Lain like that. Unexpectedly, you suddenly open the door and the sister's shocked by it. But the thing is... that's still not even necessarily played for laughs. It can just be a laugh in its own way, but it's also maybe a little bit discomforting because you realize what, she's getting obsessed and whatever. But the point is that something so tonally consistent where it doesn't just cop out, or even like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, right? One of the best animes ever. It would always have a serious moment, but then instead of letting it simmer, what would happen? Some comic relief would break it up. They would do that way too much where... I appreciate just make it fully consistent for better or for worse, and then let the result speak for itself. So that's what I mean when I say something similar. Like, there are a few movies I think of like this, but it's very rare to find that, especially in anime. Like, obviously, I guess the first Full Metal Alchemist series was more like that, where it would just be really serious, and that would be it. It wouldn't try to cop out or escape from that, right? So some of the early scenes are much better. In the 2003 Alpha Male, like Shao Tucker and with Slicer and stuff like that at the Fifth Laboratory. So we're going to start in 3, 2, or hang on. I always think I'm going to start and then I bait myself out. We're going to start in 3, 2, 1. It always delays it by a second. Which you might say, oh, that's built in and that'll always happen, but maybe it won't. And this one's even hard to find, like, anywhere to watch it in the first place. So we're starting in 3, 2, 1. Or there's always, like, a black screen at the beginning. Do we get the present day, present time? We get to enjoy our little boa duvet thing again. We see Lain on the little screen every single time. I think that's the same. See, that's where even little things about knowing stuff about it can ruin it. Even though you could say the opening kind of does that, but the fact of the matter is that, even what little I knew about it, just, it has to do with computers, and she's going to get obsessed with computers. That might be the only thing I know about it, but that's still kind of, I would rather not even have known that. So you might be wondering now, where is this really going? You wouldn't think of it in a negative sense, like it's going to be that she's going to get obsessed and everyone's going to regret this, or... You don't necessarily know that, right? There could be that implication, but I guess I know that for sure, but I don't know really to the full extent. I just assume it's going to end on a really sad note because it started off on such a sad note. Like, 2 characters have already killed themselves. Like, it's not been the happiest series that we've seen so far, which is fine. I actually sometimes prefer that. What a contrast. I'm watching like fucking Shark Tank and What Would You Do in my other slot right now just for whatever reason. And then I'm watching this, but I kind of like it that way, so I don't know what I'll watch after this. I guess it was supposed to be Monk, but maybe I'll save that. Because I did a coin flip. There were 2 series in particular that I felt like watching that is the whole reason why I started this React format. And that was Monk, which is like a detective comedy series from a while ago, and then there's this one, Lain, right? And so I flipped a coin to decide which one I'd watch, which I'm kind of glad it was this one first, just because it's shorter, so there's less of a commitment, whereas Monk is going to be a super long, I don't know how many seasons it is, but okay, it starts now. So here we're on the street again. Every episode starts like this. Now, is that Lain's voice? Like, as she's in The Wire, I don't need parents, I don't need religion. Interesting. So we're going to have, like, the computer god, worship some sort of computer god over here. But no, it's like, I don't need parents, I don't need family. It's all just, like, we're connected in The Wire. The Wire is my family. I am many, for we are one, or I am legion, for we are many. I am the wires, for we are many. Something like that. They could extrapolate on the quote like that. I don't know. So she's obsessing again. You see the eyes focused. So the sister must have just made fun of her a little bit and moved on, but now she's turned it into something above and beyond with respect to that little piece that she got. I forget what they even call it. So she didn't ever use that drug ExpLAIN thing, or now the father's looking on. Oh, this might be the scene, actually. Or no, he's just gonna brood, like where he's scolding her, the only scene that I've seen. So the father's looking into her room as she works in the darkness and obsesses over it, and he's looking like disappointed. But this progressed kind of fast. It's like he was encouraging her, and now he's regretting it, like... Her sister almost looks familiar somehow, like there's a character I've seen in some other anime that looks just like her. Now the parents are going to have an intervention for her obsessing over computers, but... Mika is her sister's name, so nobody's taking the sister seriously, but she has the instinct. But she was always quiet and weird, so now she's just focused on something. So what is it? They're not doing anything about it? Let's just... It almost makes the dad look like the bad guy, like he wants her to do this somehow. Lain will make us millionaires on the wire. It was all worth it. I don't know, like there's some sort of scam or conspiracy going on with it. He didn't look good in that scene, actually. Because he's looking into the thing. What, is Lain going to become like a mass murderer now in the wire? Like, you're killing this guy? But, no, he's looking in that room so ominously. If you were really concerned about her, just say something. So is this what Lain looks like in the wire, where she's wearing this red and is the bringer of death over here? I like this guy's voice acting. Very incredulous. See, when the dialogue is minimalistic, it comes down more to the tone and the delivery and stuff like that. This must be her, like, in her alter ego personality. And you won't hear a peep about it on the news, because I guess it's in the wire, just like everything else. They don't want to have exposition on. One of their teachers got killed, and they'll be desensitized to that too. Again? Or she looks different already with her whole mannerisms and stuff. It's called The Wired, not even The Wire. She's like so much happier. But it's like fake happiness. It's like a creepy smile. Everybody who played it killed themselves. So let's play it too. Sounds like a great idea. What, they'll wait for you and then you can hang out again? Or they want to play with you? But see, this is the first time she's been smiling this episode. I've never seen her smile till now. So she's finally happy doing something she loves. She's actually happy for the first time. Or wait, this girl is dressed like the one we saw in the vision, so maybe it wasn't Lain. So that teddy bear was the same thing too she had. They're really abusing the whole suicide angle, like, fuck. So I assume that was the same guy who jumped off the roof apparently there, but at the beginning that they're talking about, but it looked like he was getting killed right outside his door, though. She always does. Pashuke. Everybody's helping her without knowing the full implication of what she's doing, maybe. She's so innocent, it's hard not to trust her, but she could be up to some crazy shit here. But no, she always does it in the dark. Like, does this really help you? It's too much effort to turn on the light, or like you don't want anyone to see what you're doing? Like, that's part of her mysterious vibe, is that just that she, back to the club again, is just that she works always in the dark. That shows signs of obsession and lets you see the reflection in her eyes. We're going to see the club more often than any other setting, like more often than the school. But no, I like how nice Alice actually is to her. But no, this is the first time we've seen Lain happy, so this is like... But is it true happiness, or is it some sort of addictive happiness, like... I don't know, like a creepy vibe. So now she's going to be killing somebody else, but this isn't Lain then, it's that little girl in the wire, apparently. But everybody kind of just knows about the wire, so it's like not that big of a deal. We get to see from the victim's eyes what the thing looks like. Right, the world around him looks like a game or something. It couldn't be Lain doing this stuff already, though, is it? This could pass off as like the Ring or something, like that creepy girl you see by the well. No, that is totally Lain. But this might be the first time we've ever seen her in the wire. Right, at least that we know of. Well, it's all in your head, but that leads to you somehow killing yourself. Is this all it's going to be? Everyone is just going to kill themselves? Or it's some little VR module that maybe he destroyed, but he's so hooked on it that he'd rather potentially die than do that. All this is... Oh, look at her actually talking. That proves it's not the regular Lain, because she never said anything. She finally... She finally started speaking like louder, like even in the daytime with the friends. She's speaking up and not whispering anymore. And also, she's smiling and happy, you know. But this looks like somebody else then. Role-playing using a gun, somehow he can just do that. Well, then why were you afraid if you can just materialize a gun out of your hand? I bet Red John wish he had this ability in Season 6, Episode 8. This is kind of a... I think bitch would be more the word you're looking for here. This is almost a comical scene, though, with how stupid it is. Lately, just the way they're showing it is kind of silly, but... this is at least giving you an example of what The Wire is going to feel like for somebody, but... Or, I don't like how they call it that, The Wired. You're wired if you're in The Wire, but it should just be called The Wire. But they don't want to copyright that show that wasn't even out by now, that's considered one of the best shows of all time, called The Wire, and I don't even know what it's about. Or now he's going to end up having killed like a little girl without realizing what he's doing in the real world. Right, it's like using some hallucinogenic drug, and you might do something like you think, oh, this guy's about to kill me, but he was really just standing there, right? It exaggerates everything. We see Lain there in the background. But it wasn't Lain at the beginning, because she was dressed like that other little girl. But that must be that little girl's alter ego that might have just died. Open world PvP, how innovative. What the fuck is he talking about? I got linked up with a tag game. Phantom. I didn't know they'd be focusing so much on this game thing, though. The Knights, that was some like vigilante organization or something that we heard about maybe earlier. Oh, he just comes out and says you might be obsessed. But she never had much... That's not exactly the response you want to hear. I don't know if this was even the scene. It might be another one similar to this that I saw, but that's very... He just comes out and just says it, though. I thought they would build up to it more. He says you might be obsessed with it. But no, she never cared about the real world much anyway, so she feels more connected here, literally, I guess. So he knows about the processor, he knows about everything. Don't confuse it with the real world, like social media that people spend time on, but... The twist is going to be like the dad's on the wire too, and he's obsessed with it, and somehow... The music is kind of too loud. Yeah, this was a very climactic scene at least, where she's just very openly saying, I'll soon be metamorphosized with it. Little red dot laser pointer to distract her. Maybe her dad's trolling her, or maybe it's something else. Or she'll keep seeing things in the real world now. Or it's those creepy guys coming to mess with her from the car. There it is. Are those gun laser pointers or what? She's acting like she knows something now, when before she was just scared. This is the most emotion we've seen from her, both positive and negative, in this episode. Right? She's completely different than ever before. Like a deer in the headlights there. But see, her sister saw them too, so that can't just be in her mind. But she has some telepathic power there that nobody else understands. This reminds me of the game where Michael Douglas and stuff, where it's it's all part of, it's not really happening. It just seems like, it seems like it's real, but it's actually just all part of the game, even if it seems like you're about to die. But no, I almost have to watch that scene again with the dad. At least good on him for doing that. In fact, the dad gets a +1 for that, with respect to, being so forward and blunt with just saying you might be obsessed with it. But she's the exact perfect personality type to get obsessed with it. So this is where we start talking about the game, Phantoma or whatever, so much, which I kind of dislike that. It makes it less mysterious. The Wire overall felt like its own entity, where it could have been it doesn't just have to be about a game, it could be about plenty of other things too. And whenever we see her on the computer, she's just doing the same thing. You just see the base screen, an email and stuff like that. That this is not only fear-mongering for computers, how computers are going to turn ruining our children and getting them obsessed, but also like how video games are going to also do it too, combined. Because up to this point, I wasn't even thinking about it in that context, that like, oh, it's a game that they're talking about or focusing on. That's almost like too oversimplified. It could have been just the act of some sort of virtual reality simulator thing that makes people confuse reality with the whatever. But no, maybe the dad goes in the wire thing too, and I don't really get the whole extent. So that little girl was killed maybe by the guy who was role-playing like he had a gun or something. So that kind of shows you an example of what can go wrong, though. Is like, you know, they're just playing a game, but it seems so real that you take it seriously, and then you feel like you're going to die, and you're going to jump off a roof and kill yourself, or you're going to kill a little girl who's just playing with you in the VR thing. So, yeah, this is why meta is bad. VR headsets are bad, by the way. So now we'll go ahead and we'll rewatch some of that little part there. Well, that was a pretty good episode. I'll give that also a B. But yeah, she definitely had a full transformation with respect to like her whole personality was different. She's happy. She's talking with all these big words and all this kind of stuff that's like, you know, she's very aware of even what she's doing and what she wants. Soon I'll be metamorphosized. Like, it almost doesn't sound like her talking anymore, right? But if that makes you happy, give you one little warning here. You were the one who was encouraging her in the first place, so that's the problem. But I'll still give you a +1 for being so upfront about it. But see, she completely brushes it off and smiles there. She only just started using it, and now she's already questioning the border and fabric of reality. In full range and full motion. Is that even a word? Metamorphosed? Metaphorphosized? But with that creepy smile, sometimes I wonder. Like, that's a very good scene. But it maybe was a little bit too heavy-handed still. I thought that conversation would happen later, or it probably will still happen later. Like, she'd already said, I want to be metamorphosized with the VR or whatever, right? With the wire, so she's already set her intention. And now you see that little red dot distracting you. That could be your dad in the wire trying to stop you from being so obsessed with it, right? Those guys in the black car. There's some loud music that's playing during this whole scene, though, towards the end of the conversation with the dad, and even now, so it makes it very hard to hear what's going on. And of course, I don't have subtitles for this part, or for this show. So yeah, it was a pretty good episode. Let's kind of recap what exactly happened. Everybody's noticing, the sister's noticing. Mika is the sister's name. This is why Lain is so quiet, because the mother's a bitch about tone of voice. Right, do I have to remind you? Yeah, you don't have to remind Lain, because she's always so whispery anyway. So the dad kind of redeems himself a little bit towards the end, but he looks almost kind of weird here, like he just doesn't know what to do with it, or you could just ground her, take away her computer privileges. Again, just remember, you're the one who encouraged her to do it, and kept lecturing her, you got to keep up with the future, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, even the teacher was saying you got to check your emails and stuff like that. So we start off with like this pseudo horror scene where it's kind of like this guy running away and getting killed by like a little girl, potentially with the bear, right? And so I don't understand fully. This isn't Lain, and then Lain appears later, but she wasn't the one who deals with the guy. She's just kind of watching that happen, like a little girl gets killed or something like that. This definitely almost feels like a multi-genre sort of show, where it's going in all these kind of other weird directions. So yeah, that's definitely the same little girl that we saw. And that guy says like, oh, I didn't know it was just a little girl, but you can see that it's just a little girl, even though she seems creepier, you know, when she's kind of in her element, maybe more. So Alice picks up the little thing. But no, I like Lain's transformation of her personality. She's talking more, she's talking louder, she's much more focused, she's much more obsessed on what she's doing. She's very you know, this reminds me of Light Yagami, like Light in the beginning of Death Note. This is an interesting characterization. Not that he's really so understated and quiet, but he's so unmotivated. Like, he's a very smart person, but he's like, I just don't care, right? This world is rotten, and I'm just so bored, and I just don't know what to do with myself. And then he gets to Death Note, and then he's so focused, right? There are scenes like that in the beginning, like where the mom asks, his mom says, you know, oh, you're number one on the placement test again. That's my Light. Is there anything you want, like as a reward or a present? He's like, no, I'm fine, Mom. And then he thinks to himself, I've already got what I want. And then he sits down to write names in his notebook again. It's like these characters who are empty, blank slates, sort of searching for a purpose. And once they have it, they commit to it hard. So we'll see how much Lain is consistent with that as well. One of the biggest things I respect about Light is his consistency. He says in episode 1, I want to change the world, and I'm committed to it, and I'm going to do what it takes. And he's the same way throughout the whole series, right? He never hesitates, he never falters in his measure, in his intention, right? It's only a matter of ability. Like, I know what I'm going to do. I fully intend to do it. I'm not going to regret it. I'm not going to question the morality, like, oh, was what I was doing wrong? Right, he's fully aware and fully deliberate, and so now it just becomes a matter of ability. Are you good enough to catch me? Am I good enough to get away? Right, that's the Machiavellian absolutist way that Light Yagami operates. So the stakes here might not be quite as high, where you're like changing the world and all this kind of stuff, but I mean, I guess you're changing the wired world. Why do they call it that, though? Shouldn't it be the wire? They say it like grammatically incorrectly. The wired is only it could be like one of those lost in translation things where they just kept it, but like wired is more like a way you describe it, like I'm wired to the wire, not I'm wired to the wired, or I'm in the wired, right? They keep saying it with the D at the end, but whatever. The point is that as like an interesting character contrast, the Light Yagami, again, he starts off, he's very smart, but he's kind of bored and doesn't know what to do with himself, whereas here Lain was also very quiet and understated, right, and also doesn't seem to have any strong interest or anything like that, even in computers or even in anything else. And then once you get to the end of that, you realize that, so they're just kind of searching for something, and so you give them the Death Note, and then he's fully committed, he's fully focused. There's another moment like that too, where he's like, you know, he'll tell his friends, right, Light's walking home from school, and it's like, I gotta go home now. Right, I got something to do, something very, you know. Why were you in such a hurry to get home? Asked Ryuk. He's like, I have something to do, something very important. And then he goes and writes names in his notebook, and even pisses off Ryuk. Like, Ryuk's getting bored. I didn't give you the Death Note just to write names in it all day. Like us lazy Shinigami never do that. But no, I appreciate the full commitment, and I like this full transformation that she had, where, again, it's sort of her purpose and her focus. Like, she didn't have any idea what she's doing, or like she didn't have any strong motivation, and so now this is where she's sinking all her time and effort into. But I like how aware of it she is too. Like, her rebuttal on being obsessed isn't like, you know, oh, I'm not obsessed, I'm just doing it for fun. Instead, it's like, oh, you know, no, I am obsessed, I'm going to actually become part of it. The real problem is that I'm not assimilated with it yet all the way, not that I'm obsessed with it, partly, right? So she kind of comes back with a weird way to say it. And then, I bet if she was making money from it, if she's Twitch streamed her adventures here into the wire, she'd be world famous, and then you couldn't question her. She could afford to buy her own place, so your stupid dictatorial, patriarchal society can't be fucking brought down on her to stop her from doing this. You're going to take away her computer privileges or something. Or he's going to like hack into her computer and stop her from doing this. Like the dad is totally going to do something to stop her from doing this. So we discovered the whole Phantoma game thing, right? And then we also have to consider other implications of what, like, we haven't seen too much as she's sitting at the computer happen. It's more so we see it in these other ways. Like those two guys outside are real though, because again, the sister saw them. So that doesn't mean that, oh, that's just a figment of her imagination or something. So she's doing something on the wire that these guys want to stop her from doing, or then the sister obviously notices it first, and then the parents are concerned about it. I mean, the simple solution would be just take the computer away from her, right? And then what's she going to do? Run away or something? Like, you're almost being too nice and too accommodating if you're really worried about it. When she's talking about actually assimilating and getting metamorphosized about it, starts to use all these big words and starts to, it's like characters who have great potential who are always holding back. It's sometimes how people feel like in real life. Like, oh, you have so much potential, but you never have an opportunity to use it. So whether you bring it out in games or sports or whatever, like a passion that you have in writing, right? So in your everyday life, it doesn't come out because you have to be restricted to this sort of social structure and this and that lowest common denominator. If you do anything too noteworthy, you get ridiculed for it or whatever, right? So everybody wants to hold you down just to justify this half-assed mediocrity that everyone feels happy to be mediocre together rather than being exceptional alone or doing something sort of above and beyond. So the whole reality is that, it's like she's committing to it so strongly, and she partly is doing it to find her friend, but it almost seems like it's circumventing that somewhat. Like she's just obsessed with the period overall at some point. And so, yeah, that was a very good scene with the dad. I still don't feel like that's actually the one that maybe we saw. Maybe there's another scene similar to that later, because that's like the only one scene that I've seen, but it's at least similar to that. And so that was very good, and I like at least that he was blunt. So if we review the character point system, the dad gets a +1 for that, although arguably a -1 for encouraging her in the first place, but I get it. His intent was positive. So he gets a +1 for this moment. Lain, I don't even know how to judge her because she's just a neutral. She hasn't done anything one way or the other. And then, like, that's easy to judge in terms of that. The mom is a -1 just for general apathy. Right, so the mom is a -1, the dad is a +1, the sister is a, I don't know, I feel like the sister did something, but generally she's not doing a whole lot, or I'll give her a +1 for actually being so vocal about it, right, and caring about Lain like that way. And then, who else? Alice is kind of nice and gets a +1 for her general helpfulness and always being so nice to Lain and stuff like that. Again, not even that it's a biased character point system, just that she's nice generally and understanding as a person is like a +1 general good attribute. And then beyond that, you have what other characters are really relevant here. Like, there really aren't that many main characters, right? A lot of people you just kind of see and they come and they go. Like that little girl with the teddy bear is apparently dead, whether it be for real or in the wire, right? She was maybe under one of those rags of cloth that he shot with this little play toy invisible role play gun that he had. But then I wouldn't be afraid of anything if I could just materialize a gun out of my fucking hand here. But yeah, I don't know. It's like a lot of things happen there. Let's watch sort of towards the ending a little bit more. But no, there's something weird that happens in the scene where there's like music that's super loud that cuts off the dialogue. So she's logging in again, and then I almost can't hear what's being said here. She's asking like some high-level questions about using the processor. Might run into some glitches. You might get obsessed and actually kill yourself. Like, too many of these things are like super well known sometimes to take seriously. Like The Wired is, everyone knows about it, and it started off and it was kind of mysterious. And then Phantoma is a game that makes people kill themselves when they play it. So like, so you go back to Siberia for what? Or like some. Or he like Freudian slips the name. Oh, Phantoma. So she's asking like over the wire to him, and he doesn't even know who's asking, but he lets it slip, just the name of it, so then she figures out from there. So you wouldn't be interested in that game called Phantoma that you can download at www.phantoma.com. It's like, you already told me what I wanted to know. Right, that was almost like a bait. Even if he's saying you wouldn't be interested, he still let you know, right? So you can find out on your own. I'm guessing is kind of what she was trying to do there. So let's watch maybe that scene with the dad again. That is a fascinating scene. That's the whole key dynamic here. I like her motivation at least. Even with the top of the line civilian use Navi, so that's the solution. Just get one that isn't civilian use. Or she started saying daddy more, like, I thought you would know, daddy. And then her expression sort of changes when he leaves. And all these smiles. See, when someone like Lain smiles, it is creepy because she never used to do that before. And she's doing it now when she says like all these kind of crazy things. But yeah, that line is going to be the iconic one, certainly from this episode, or for a while. Like, you know, I'll soon enter in full range and full motion. I'll be completely metamorphosized. Like, when did she ever say anything remotely close to that before? Not even in this context. Like, sure, she wasn't using the computer before, but like, she wouldn't use words like that, and she was like very quiet in both senses. She wouldn't talk a lot, but even what she would say would be like very light and to the point, like just a few words. So her confidence level has shot up. She's much more talkative and outgoing and things like that. But see, you would think this would be a point of encouragement too. Like, she's going to be the Bill Gates or something and come up with some new crazy technology and this and that. Right, so she'll end up being a billionaire. So you're going to regret it if you don't encourage her now, even though obviously based on the way the story is going, that probably it won't be such a happy, positive outcome. So